2.5 weeks of your life, do you feel like, was it an overwhelming experience in general?
Oh yes, it was very overwhelming in general. From the start, as being picked as the letter, the questionnaire in the mail, to clear to, okay, here's your first day of being selected as a juror. When he tells you, he says, I don't know if I can congratulate you or not, but you have been chosen as jurors, and you're like, oh wow, it was very overwhelming, and for 12 days, 12 days of and well, we had one day off for election day, but yeah, it was very overwhelming from start to there.
Tell me about when you first sat down in there. This is now the deliberation part of it. That I probably even amped it up even more.
Oh yes, when we knew, Monday the defense rest, and so we knew Tuesday we'd come in for closing arguments, and when we walked into that room, it was everybody. You just knew all the tension everybody had. Everybody was silent, and I personally felt I had just a huge weight was just set on me. And we walked into that room, and everybody sat down at where we normally were sitting, and then it was, okay, you have to elect your jury foreman, and we did that pretty unanimously. Everybody picked the same one, and he said, okay, this is how we start. We start with a preliminary vote, and we did our preliminary vote. Sent piece of paper around each of us. The vote come back 5 not guilty, 7 guilty, and then we started from there on. Okay, how do we change the other 5, or the other 5 change us 7, and we started from there. And everything from going over witnesses to all the notes that we took, to rewatching the videos of Detective Miller's, listening to his, Davis, Detective Davis, and his help, and we did that and went from there. And that's how and then we got to go out into the courtroom where the weight bench was.
How about that? Tell me about that, because now maybe ask you this. You said that after you went out and then you came back in, already 3 votes had changed?
Yes.
What was it that they indicated was, obviously there must have been something that persuaded them to come to the other side?
Yes, when we did some experiments on the weight bench, and we realized that she could have got out without any with no help. We set the weight on one of the lady jurors. We set the weight on her and told her to see if she could get out, and she rolled her hips right off the side of it, and right out she come. And she did it twice. We had her do it twice just to make sure it wasn't a fluke, but she come out of it twice. And then Mr. Hartley said, straddling Mr. Davis that day, said that he felt he sat on her and held the bar down. So we had another juror sit on our defenseless juror there under the bar and sit on her, and sure enough, she couldn't get out.
That was
so,
it then.
And that was it for the other 3 to switch. The timeline was a huge thing for me personally. That from where he come home at 8:30 and told everybody he didn't get home till 11:30, and then that 8:56 or 9 to 10 something. Can't remember off the top of my head, but from that timeline when he was receiving phone calls and receiving text messages, and he never responded once to any of them. That, to me, that was my personal thing, saying, in her time of death being, I always thought time of death was just like TV. You stuck the thermometer in there, and time of death was 350. But for him to say so many hours, and in that the Wagner, can't think of it. Yes, Dr. Wagner saying that time of death, it can be so broad that but roughly a ballpark, he said, between that time. So we were like, okay, that was my decision. That said, okay, that tells me that in that video, the home surveillance video, he was in his shorts at that time at 10:02, I think, or 10:08, and to me, that was what sealed me to say guilty for sure. So
in other words, the fact that he wasn't responding to any calls or text messages, he was preoccupied with this idea that he was, we knew he was doing something,
right.
But beyond that, even if he'd already done it, he probably was busy trying to cover things up.
Oh yes, I felt that he was, he tried to cover a lot of what he did up. To the running out. I don't know, why would you run out of the garage, or run back into the garage at just before you run, you went to back the truck out. I didn't understand, why would you run back into the garage? If you put her in the back of the truck like you said, wouldn't you just jumped in the driver's seat and backed out? So sound right, but I tried to stay as neutral as possible through the whole trial. You know, I didn't want to make a split decision on something that I just saw one time. So, you know, when we got to deliberate and I got to go in is when and I got to see
your first vote. You were part of the guilties.
Yes, my first vote was guilty. Yes, my first vote in there was definitely guilty.
But during the trial, you were still saying, I want to keep an open mind.
Yes, very much so. And it's hard when you know, you hear Prosecutor Hartley and he's saying, you did this and he did this, and he's showing all the evidence, and then Mr. Campbell comes out and puts that little bit of doubt in your mind, and then, you know, okay, so, well, maybe he didn't do it. And then here comes the next witness, and Hartley's back saying, nope, you did this and this, and you're like, well, yeah, you're right. That's a pretty strong case saying, yeah, you did something you weren't, you know, you're guilty. And then Mr. Come right back, and it was like, oh, well, no, Mr. Campbell said this, so that's enough doubt for me. And it was that way through the whole trial, you know, through the whole, from all the witnesses and everything. It was constant back and forth, very mentally, you know, and being such a huge responsibility that the 12 of us had, even the other 2 alternates, was huge.
How about go over again this point where you were talking about the video? That sounds like that was a kind of a ceiling. It gave you the, in my mind, I'm now more confident.
Yeah, in my mind, what made me the most confident is when at 8:32, Pattison was, you know, was at the house, and then he was at 9:58 he was back in, you know, where he was walking in and out through the video, and at 10:06 he was in shorts and t-shirt on the phone. Well, why would you change from work pants and a work shirt and a flannel and work boots coming in, and then now we're seeing you 2 hours, hour and a half later in shorts and a t-shirt and slippers? So to me, that was one thing that just made me go, that don't sound right, quite right. You know, that don't look right. Why would you do that? And then, you know, right before he jumped in the truck to take Lisa to the hospital, he's in Carhartt pants, same t-shirt and a flannel. So I'm like, in work boots. So you're like, well, why are you changing clothes? So seeing the shorts and the time of death being that around that 8 to 10 o'clock area, and that was the time we saw him in the video, that he was in his shorts, was really what sealed the deal for me.
How about those other 2 that were still holdovers? You had 5 goes down to 2 that were not guilty. What got them over the top?
Well, it was 10-2, and I think just going over all the evidence again and the timelines, and watching the video and all of the Mr. Pattison changing from, you know, I was home at 11:30, and we saw him, you know, at 8:30, and texting, you know, Stacy, why Lisa's in the back. He's texting her on his way to the hospital, and his wife's, you know, dead in the back of his truck. And then he told Detective Davis that, he says, well, do you know how hard it is to drive and hold a body? And I was like, a body? You know, that's your wife. That's not a body. And and I think just on that, kind of switched him past that 50% range to convict. So
how about was there any disputes, any times of emotion going on in that? There must have been some pretty, I wouldn't say heated exchanges, but it would have to be passion in there.
Oh, there was passion in there. You know, a lot of us felt, you know, we were in our thing, you know, we're all doing our, sorry. But we were all, you know, we're all in there, you know, you got 12 people that have different points of views, and you're all not going to immediately say, yep, we're all right, everybody's different. So nobody got mad, nobody got upset. Everybody pointed their point of views out. You know, I said how I felt, and, you know, and how I felt it was done, and a couple of the other jurors said, you know, well, this is how I feel, you know, what happened. And just with that, and like I said, the timeline was big, and the video was even bigger, and that's what I think flipped the other 2 to convict. So.
And then I really like that weight bench, that being able to go in there and play around with that thing made a difference to some of them.
Oh yes, the weight bench was huge, because, you know, you're in your own thinking, you're like, well, I wouldn't know how to get out from underneath. To me, I was like, I don't know how I would get out from underneath that. And so it was just, we just did our own experiments to see if you know, Lisa was, you know, coherent, because she fought whatever she did, the bruising on her shoulder and on her back, she fought to get out from under that bar. And when we had our juror, you know, on the bench, and she didn't have to struggle very hard at all. It was just, she just rolled her hips off the side, and she was on the floor within seconds. And that was all 105 pounds, 4 pounds on that bar was on her, and she slid right out from underneath it, and she was smaller than Lisa Pattison. She weighed less, and she, even at that much, she couldn't even lift the bar off of her to unlatch it. To unlatch it, even we had to help her get that, but she still got out. So.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, was it? And I've never been on a jury. Does it hard, even though you're convinced he did it? Was it ever hard to say, man, I know I'm sending this guy away for a long time. I don't know how many years, because that's not my job, that's the judge's job. But I do know that when you're convicted of murder, it's a long time. Does ever that, are you able to separate that out and not really let that bother your thinking at all?
I didn't let it bother me at all because I wasn't really sure. Judge, thank you. Judge McAllen said to us that, you're convicting of guilty of murder of Lisa Pattison, or he's not guilty of murder of Lisa Pattison. And that was really what we stuck to. Nobody really worried. Nobody really knew, I guess I should say, of how long he was going away for prison. I mean, we knew he was going to prison, but we have nothing saying how long he'd be gone or anything. So.